This was intended to be a shorter video, but the content simply demanded more, and the script wound up writing itself. It goes from Star Wars into morality and mysticism, and back to Star Wars again. If you want an overview before heading in, check the timestamps pinned at the top. For a relatively short video, it represents a fair amount of work, and in the spirit of George Lucas, it was done with a lot of love. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
Interesting color. You pick it?
Oh, no, the guy at the counter. Why?
No, they say geniuses pick green. But you didn't pick it.
Green energy. We ain't talking about windmills either. Yoda's advantage, his edge over all other Jedi and Sith, is his color. Not that type of color, young man.
Allow me to explain.
Green represents Yoda's temperament, philosophy, and approach to all matters Jedi. And it's why he was uniquely qualified to lead Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Anakin, and the rest of his Padawans. This gets a lot more detailed and a whole lot more interesting. Having already answered the what, let's move on to the why. If you hang in for just a bit, I promise specifics and a payoff.
Have I got your attention now? Good.
Personality and temperament matters. Not a bit, a lot. Especially when it comes to leading others. In some domains, you can fake it till you make it. But when it comes to long-term leadership, who you really are, your baseline orientation, is where energy will be typically drawn in order to meet everything leadership demands. Introverts can have extroverted moments, but ask an introvert if they'd like to do cocktail parties every week after work. Beta males, to use an overused term, can have alpha moments, but these efforts cannot be sustained for very long because they are not true to the nature of the person forced to stretch beyond their comfort zone. Without the kind of rare existential crisis that forces someone to undergo permanent radical change, they simply won't be able to perform beyond their means. Understanding how Yoda's green, baseline disposition provides him situational advantages in the Star Wars universe asks us to appreciate the magic in the Holy Trinity, Kabbalah, and once more, chakras, which were discussed in the previous video.
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again?
Button up my sleeve. Presto!
We'll also need to consider the meaning and magic of the primary colors of light and their qualities. Colors themselves have archetypal characteristics and are the living extensions of things in red, blue, green, and everywhere in between. As discussed in the previous video, green sits in between red and blue on the color spectrum. These three circles could be said to represent the Trinity across different faiths and belief systems, with red representing the Father, blue, the Mother or Holy Spirit, and green, the child or son, which is the byproduct of the intersection of the parents. There are characteristics, even advantages to each color, just as there are advantages to the different philosophies and approaches to life. None are bad, but the advantage that each has is situational. There will be times when an aggressive force is required, but there are times when it'll get you killed. And there are times when relative passivity and calculated strategies are not up to the challenge of overwhelming aggression. But of course, creative strategy and calculation can win the day too.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
In all of this, what should be emphasized is that tendencies or rigid dogma create habitual situational limitations. If you tend toward aggression, red, if that's your dogmatic baseline disposition, then you are more likely to find it difficult and arduous to meet the challenges best met with creativity and strategic thinking.
3, 4, 5, 6. Roman gets up to the knee. 8. That's it. The fight is stopped. Muhammad Ali.
And if you're limited strictly to creative plans to win, you'll find yourself in trouble in the face of overwhelming force. But what if you have a robust mix of both tendencies, so much so that your natural inclinations are balanced? If you were a hybrid of mother and father, of the masculine and the feminine so completely, you'd find it easier to adjust to any situation. You'd be like Yoda. You'd be green. Not green as in inexperienced, but green as in balanced. In hockey, and especially soccer, from the middle, a goalie has the best chance of covering the entire window. and over the course of a game or games, they'll spend most of the time somewhere in between the extremes. What we've been referring to as baseline orientation is Yoda's advantage. A green baseline orientation is the integration of both feminine and masculine approaches. This is balance, and Yoda is the epitome of it.
Is the dark side stronger?
No. But the busier, more seductive.
But how am I to know the good side from the bad?
You will know when you are calm, at peace, passive.
While it requires more upfront work, it pays off down the road. This is opposite to the approach of the Sith, who enjoy faster access to Force power via the dark side, because they are unconcerned about the negative consequences of their actions. But someone willing to do the hard work will find the green path easier in the long run.
I don't believe it.
That is why you fail.
It's not easy being green.
Not with that attitude, bitch. Just a little joke to keep things light. I like Kermit. Throughout the 6 George Lucas penned films, we see Yoda masterfully execute aggression and restraint, whatever the moment calls for. While he doesn't wield Force lightning, Yoda is the only Jedi presented as strong enough to diffuse it without a lightsaber and transmute it using the Force itself. He is simultaneously forceful and self-governed. The fact that Yoda's lightsaber and skin are green are obviously not accidents. Unless, of course, you're what I like to call an accident theorist. These were creative choices by Mr. Lucas, who, through his work, has told on himself in a good way, revealing his immersion in mystical lore well beyond the writings of Joseph Campbell, which would have been impressive enough. Through his love, through his care, George Lucas shared his knowledge, wisdom, and insight in a story that is so well crafted, you can enjoy it even on the strictly liminal or surface level. But if you watch Star Wars with respect to the subliminal, the stories are even better, and it's like watching them again for the first time. Perhaps you've heard it said that a pendulum in motion spends the majority of its time in the middle. It's true, by the way, but have you ever tried to visualize it? Seeing it in motion helps to appreciate this important fact even more. Here's a metronome, which will serve the same purpose as a clocked pendulum. Over the course of 12 swings, we can count the number of times each color is crossed or dinged by the pendulum. Here, the pendulum is meant to represent an incoming challenge of some kind, and its swing path represents a range of potential challenges. The dots represent types of temperaments or philosophies that are best suited to meet a problem when it arrives. Notice that the frequency of interactions with green in this model is twice that of the interactions at either end of the extremes. Of course, this is a static, constrained model, but in terms of statistical probability, the red and blue extremes neutralize each other, while the green receives and enjoys the balance of both. The strike tally chart of our model produces a balanced pattern. Turning this sideways gives us an approximation of a basic sine wave. Remove the letter E from sine, turns this from a mathematical term to a biblical Christian one. While the dictionary definition of sin, the definition we're familiar with, basically means doing bad things, in Hebrew, the word for sin is kiheta, which means to miss the mark. This gives us a deeper understanding of the nature of good and evil, and points back to Yoda, the Jedi, and the Sith, or green, blue, and red, respectively. The mark or target that is being missed when we sin is the center, the state of balanced perfection between opposite, sometimes warring approaches and ideologies. Once again, Yoda, as a symbol of balance, goodness, and green, was quite at home in the center. It was his home office. He worked from there. He taught from there. He chilled there. In nature and in the universe, anything or anyone unbalanced succumbs to entropy. They break down and their corrupted bodies die. This is because the sustaining life force of God, or good, remains in a balanced state of perfection, which we, in our bodies, fail to endure. Remaining in this state of perfect being or consciousness allows no margin for error. To understand this is to better understand God, or what it is to be perfectly good. This ceaseless perfection is unique, in that it causes and sustains itself. This is, again, perfect goodness or godliness, and this is the non-denominational, holistic way to consider God or good, no matter what word you use to describe it. Anyone claiming exclusive dibs on the creator of the universe under any man-made brand or banner is committing an act of theft, and thou shalt not steal.
We will not live by your commandments. We're free.
There is no freedom without the law.
The Muslims believe in the God that created the universe, and I think the Christians do, and the Jews do. Now, as long as all of them are talking about the Creator, the Jews may call him Jehovah, and Christians may have another name for him. Those who are Arabic-speaking refer to him as Allah. Well, we believe in the same God.
The elusiveness of a proper single-word description for deity is reflected in Exodus 3:14, when God describes itself to Moses as the phrase, "I am that I am." This is God's self-description as the perfect process of balanced being. Beyond names or a static essence, God is a continual process, one that cannot be owned by any religious group by simply claiming ownership through a name. This is where the limits of most conventional religious teaching reveals itself.
You are backsliding into the flames of hell. You've become a magnet for sin. We've all witnessed it.
In Romans 6:23, it's stated that the wages of sin is death. While most Christians know what this means, many fail to understand why it means it.
You don't know the first thing about love. I am filled with Christ's love. This is not a weapon.
This is not merely a statement demanding proper moral action, although it means that too. This is a descriptive axiom of universal law that says the price for missing the standard of perfect goodness causes the destruction of your biological vehicle, your very body, which is otherwise sustained through various degrees of imperfection by a range of processes that must remain in harmonious proportion in order to achieve longevity. Everything from our actions and thoughts down to our diet are not pure enough to prevent us from the destructive forces of sin and error, or kiheta. Our bodies will fail and die because of our inability to remain perfect. This is why Adam and Eve succumbed to entropy when they left the garden in pursuit of knowledge. They left behind the balanced green Garden of Eden in pursuit of the knowledge promised by the biblical serpent to make them independently godlike, or more accurately, to make them perfectly good.
Sometimes there are things no one can fix. You're not all powerful.
Well, I should be. Someday I will be. I will be the most powerful Jedi ever. I promise you. I will even learn to stop people from dying.
The problem for the characters, Adam and Eve, was that the game of perfection has very strict rules, and if you want to play it, you'll have to be willing to suffer the consequences of imperfection. That was the bargain they struck with the serpent. So the biblical fall from Eden was not a punishment from God, but a consequence of action, a consequence of choice. Sin is its own punishment, administered on time, in time. Speaking of apples, this Newtonian principle, action, reaction, is how to properly consider the problem of free will and evil. Please share this with an atheist of your choice, or anyone else who hasn't figured out that there's evil in the world because we've chosen it. Master Yoda's ability to stay green dispositionally and spiritually, or to stay centered, is the reason for his longevity and his 900-year lifespan. This was not a random point for George Lucas to make. It was quite intentional. As a Padawan learner myself, I'm giving the Master all the credit he deserves.
When 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not.
Master Yoda, you can't die.
Strong am I with the Force, but not that strong. That is the way of things. The way of the Force.
Another really cool nugget relating to the green center as the source of health and vitality are the terms and things it reveals in our rich language and in Star Wars. When someone is unbalanced, they fall sick because some aspect of them is over or underdeveloped in relation to something else. Numerologically speaking, this falling shy of balance or perfection can be represented by the number 6. which is phonically close to the word sick, and in the Star Wars universe, it happens to be phonically close to the word Sith. The Sith philosophy or mystery school in Star Wars promotes among its students an imbalanced emphasis on rage, aggression, and ambition. While this path seems to provide advantages in quickly accessing force in great volume, the Sith path enacts a heavy toll on its adherents, which is why the Sith tend to sport a sickly look and often conceal their faces. In this clip, you can see how the dark side or Sith path that Anakin confirms himself in by slaying younglings already wears on his face and in his eyes. Just as Catholics have confirmation or a symbolic rite of passage, this was his, and is similar in process to street gangs that demand a body as an initiation rite or condition. Of course, we know that yellow eyes are symptoms of liver disease, and that yellowed eyes and skin suggest toxins are accumulating in the body. In this scene, Anakin has poisoned his mind, body, and soul with evil, and he didn't even have to stop at a Taco Bell. So that's the Sith, Team Red. But what about the Jedi, Team Blue? Obi-Wan Kenobi is the prototypical Jedi. He's a dedicated soldier and a devout purveyor of Jedi teachings. He's the kind of student any teacher would want. But his passive tendencies subject his character and the audience to some dramatic moments over the course of 4 films. Because his tendencies or baseline disposition is opposite to Anakin's, Obi-Wan may not have been the best choice to shepherd Anakin in the ways of the Force.
You're gonna pay for all the Jedi that you killed today, Dooku.
We'll take him together. You're going slowly on the left.
Taking him now!
No, Anakin, no! No!
On the other hand, it could be argued that Kenobi's disposition was just what Anakin needed to help tame his darker tendencies. If you believe in fate, or recall that the early death of Anakin's first teacher is what forced this pairing to begin with, perhaps it never mattered.
Obi-Wan, promise me you will train the boy.
Yes, Master.
He is the chosen one. He will bring balance. Train him.
While he's very courageous and never backs down from a fight, in a few pivotal instances in episodes 1, 3, and 4, we see Obi-Wan resorting to wits and creativity to defeat more powerful Sith opponents. He ends Darth Maul by stealthily force-grabbing Qui-Gon's lightsaber. He defeats Anakin with positioning and ground tactics. And in Star Wars, Episode 4, knowing that he can't defeat Darth Vader in a conventional saber battle or with the Force directly, he commits the ultimate blue act of passive resistance by sacrificing his life to defeat Vader later down the road through Luke. While this was the ultimate passive act, it was creatively courageous, and given his age and Vader's increased abilities, it was his only real play. Kenobi's death, timed deliberately for Luke to see it, achieved the desired effect of motivating Luke to continue the fight on his behalf. And as we all know, Luke would wind up finishing the task, leading Vader to take one last step toward the light, a task that Obi-Wan could not manage to complete in life. It's simply brilliant. A minor aside, but I have to join at the 11th hour a chorus of hundreds of other content creators and former Star Wars fans in pointing out that this is the kind of masterful storytelling that Star Wars, unfortunately, no longer receives. To craft drama this deep and compelling and beautiful, you actually have to know things about things and care enough to convert that love of knowledge and morality into a vision. And you can't suck.
What'd you do?
I bypassed the compressor.
Based on pretty much all of the post-Lucas Star Wars offerings, it's clear that Disney is not interested in any of this. The kind of green they're interested in has nothing to do with being centered. Returning to our subject, having lit a fire under Luke's dark side, that's Star Wars humor, coupled with the knowledge that he imparts to Luke from beyond, Obi-Wan winds up factoring significantly in Vader's defeat. In a sense, through his sacrifice, he defeats Vader indirectly. And what else would you expect from someone with a passive, blue baseline disposition? Another aside, Obi-Wan's name is quite telling. You could look at Obi-Wan's name as a linguistic shorthand for fidelity to goodness.
What we learn?
The Jedi and Sith are philosophies on the opposite ends of the red-blue spectrum. Each school has a preferred approach, aggression, or passivity that can be good or bad depending on the situation. Both schools employ aggressive and passive tactics in their Star Wars or Wars of Light, or the wars over the optimal philosophy of energy expenditure, which doesn't make for a great t-shirt. But as an idea, it does make for 3 great original films, and 3 respectable prequels, despite some fair criticism. How we use the energy that we are is a reflection of who we are, and what will become in time.
This has to do with that good feeling of control, which I feel that children need to know is there. And it starts out, what do you do with the mad that you feel? And that first line came straight from a child. I work with children. What do you do with the mad that you feel when you feel so mad you could bite? When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. It's great to be able to stop when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead and think this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop, stop, stop anytime. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
With all due respect to the great Bruce Lee, who properly urged to be like water, which is conditionally true, maybe it's even better to be like Yoda. And now you know why. Thanks for listening.